Have journalists been banned from the White House under the Trump administration?
Have journalists been banned, or have they brought in alternative media that presents a different
I'm not talking about
angle?
Have journalists from organisations like the Associated Press been banned by the White House, yes or no? Have judges been threatened with impeachment because the White House doesn't like their rulings? Yes or no?
Let's not do it that way. Let's go back to that. And yes. Why were they? Why were they banned?
But so we accept, right? Are we accepting that all the things I just suggested have happened?
If you don't let me finish, then we can't really have a conversation here, because you've got a very biased perspective.
I'm not biased at all.
Very angle.
I'm giving you facts.
Good Lord, this is why I love British radio. One simple question, and the whole MAGA fairy tale just collapses like a cheap deck chair. So here's the setup. Ben Kentish on LBC is talking to Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, former Trump transition consultant, because J.D. Vance is once again stomping around claiming free speech is dying in the UK. And I'm sat here thinking, mate, you've flown across an ocean to lecture people about liberty, while your movement spends its days trying to punish journalists, intimidate critics, and rewrite reality. Halper-Hayes comes in swinging with the usual dramatic vibe: censorship, police state, people arrested for Facebook posts. And Ben does the most devastating thing imaginable. He asks for specifics, not vibes, not fear. 1. Actual. Example. Watch how fast the confidence evaporates when facts are required. If you love explosive content like this and want to see more, click that subscribe button, man. So let's roll the tape, because this is where the whole free speech is dying performance starts to wobble. Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes comes in swinging with that classic Trump world vibe. Big, scary claim, 0 receipts, and a dramatic pause like we're all meant to clap. She throws out this story about an 82-year-old being arrested for a Facebook post, like it's the end of civilization. And I'm sat here thinking, okay, that sounds serious. What did he post? And Ben Kentish does exactly what any competent journalist does. He asks the simplest, most devastating question. What was said? And suddenly it's, well, I can't remember. Oh, for the love of actually, scratch that. This is the entire playbook. Vague outrage first, details never. Meanwhile, these are the same people who spent years screaming fake news while trying to bully the press into submission. Give me a damn break.
Let's talk about J.D. Vance. He is in town, he's in Kent, I believe it is, at Chevening, the Grace and Favour mansion for the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, where he's spending a couple of days before holidaying in the Cotswolds with his family. He's had another dig about the lack of free speech, as he sees it, in the United Kingdom, saying he has raised concerns, and will continue to, that the West, including Britain, is censoring rather than engaging with different opinions. You might remember he's previously suggested that free speech is under threat in this country. What on earth is the bloke banging on about? Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes is a former consultant to Donald Trump's presidential transition team in 2016, former chair of Republicans Overseas UK. Jan, great to have you with us here on LBC. What's J.D. Vance talking about? He's got this bugbear, hasn't he? Got this chip on his shoulder about Britain having lost the right to free speech. What is he talking about? Morning.
Well, good morning. It's funny that you think that he's taking a dig. Do you not think that when an 82-year-old man is arrested for posting something on Facebook, that is not a form of censorship?
Well, it depends what he posts, doesn't it? Depends if it's legal.
Well,
what did that 82-year-old man post?
Well, let's back up a minute here. If we are starting to scrutinize everything that someone says, if we're arresting them because it is hate speech.
What is you mentioned a specific case there. What is it this 82-year-old was arrested for?
Honestly, I can't remember, but what I do remember...
You're telling me that it's outrageous that an 82-year-old man was... No, sorry, this is important, because you just said this is an example of free speech under threat in the UK, but you can't tell me what he was arrested for.
I don't remember the exact...
So why you bring it up, then?
I brought it up as an example that if we are scrutinizing what an 82-year-old man posts on Facebook...
But you can't assess that without knowing what he said, can you?
Well, you know what? Let's just say I brought up a wrong example because I don't have the context of it.
Could it possibly be now because it's all a load of nonsense and free speech isn't under threat in the UK at all, which I think you've just demonstrated respectfully?
And speaking of fake news, let me stop right there, because this is where it always collapses. Ben Kentish does the one thing MAGA-adjacent commentators absolutely cannot stand. He asks for specifics. Not vibes, not anecdotes, not everyone saying it. One clear example. And what does Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes do? She swerves. She generalises. She reaches for the old political correctness boogeyman like it's 2013 and we're all meant to gasp dramatically. Then, actually, scratch that. She admits she can't answer. She can't name a single thing you supposedly can't say in the UK without being arrested. This is the whole trick, right? Inflate a fog of menace. Free speech is under threat. And when someone calmly says, okay, where, when, who, nothing. Just offended entitlement dressed up as evidence. What do you lot make of that?
You know what? I've been there I've lived in the UK for 24 years. And yes, I do believe that censorship, it started with political correctness.
Right.
And as political correctness moved from accusing people of microaggressions and then people getting triggered over what somebody said, it has been a form of putting a speech straitjacket on people.
So what can't you say in the UK right now without being arrested that you think people should have the right to say?
You know what? That's a very good question.
It is. Thank you.
It is. I can't answer that question, and I can't give you an example exactly. But see,
so
what I find interesting.
Sorry, Jane. You've given me an example of free speech being under threat. You can't tell me what the person said.
Well,
I've asked you for one single thing that you can't say in the UK without fear of being arrested, and you can't think of anything. It's because Britain still is a country, compared to the United States, by the way, where free speech absolutely exists and always will.
Well, we both see it differently then.
But you can't give me any single point of evidence whatsoever to back up your idea.
Why don't you give me an example of how free speech still exists and censorship is not there?
Because you don't get arrested by the police for saying anything that isn't incitement or hate speech in this country. People are free to express their opinions. People are free to give their views. We do not have a police state in this country, unlike, I might say, the way that the United States is going under Donald Trump.
Well, you know, that's interesting because it's not going that way with Donald Trump. It was going that way, and it's now reversing itself.
Right. And speaking of evidence, actually, scratch that. Speaking of vibes pretending to be evidence, this is where the whole thing falls apart in real time. Because when Ben Kentish starts listing tangible examples, journalists frozen out, judges publicly threatened with impeachment-style intimidation, officials purged for saying the quiet part out loud, universities and law firms leaned on, media funding weaponized. Suddenly it's not free speech. It's, oh, you're being biased. Convenient, isn't it? And then comes the little magic trick, fake news. Of course, the universal get-out-of-jail-free card for Trump world when the facts get too sharp. But here's the problem, you can't scream fake news while also admitting the AP got banned. You've just conceded the point, mate. This is what authoritarian politics looks like. Punish critics, then whine about censorship. Pathetic.
Right, so banning journalists from the White House because you don't like what they've written, demanding the impeachment of judges because you don't like what they've ruled, sacking government officials because they've dared to criticise you at any point in recent years, defunding universities because they're not doing what you do, threatening law firms if they don't toe the party line, defunding media organisations that you think are against you, arresting students because of what they've written on social media, and ramping up checks of people entering the UK to check they haven't posted anything on Facebook you don't like, doesn't amount to any sort of attack on free speech.
That's really twisting things without the specific examples. You're giving you're giving examples the same way I gave the example of the 82-year-old man. You didn't give any examples, and I've just given you 10. No, you've just given me a very biased perspective.
Bias is facts. All of those things have happened. Which of those haven't happened? Have journalists been banned from the White House under the Trump administration?
Have journalists been banned, or have they brought in alternative media that presents a different
I'm not talking about
angle?
Have journalists from organisations like the Associated Press been banned by the White House, yes or no?
Yes, they have.
Right. Have judges been threatened with impeachment because the White House doesn't like their rulings? Yes or no?
Let's not do it that way. Let's go back to that. And yes. Why were they? Why were they banned?
But so we accept, right? Are we accepting that all the things I just suggested have happened?
If you don't let me finish, then we can't really have a conversation here because you've got a very biased perspective
I'm not
here,
biased at all.
very angle.
I'm giving you facts, and I'm just asking whether you recognise that those things are true.
You know what? It's so interesting. Did we not have a bunch of fake news here? And in the U.S., we did. And why? Why did we have fake news? Because it was biased and it was wrong. And so that is one of the reasons. You know, you're listing 10 things and cutting me off. But then why was the Associated Press no longer welcome? Because they gave fake news that has been proven.
But Jen, you coming on the national radio station here on LBC and saying an 82-year-old man being arrested is an attack on free speech without having a clue what he's actually said is not fake news at all.
It's not. It's not that I haven't had a clue. I can't remember the specifics.
Right.
But the fact that.
But how can you know it's an attack on free speech if you can't remember what he'd actually said?
Well, you know, it's very interesting because you started this off by saying J.D. Vance had a dig. And so we don't get to have an intelligent discussion about whether there really is censorship going on, if people are afraid to speak out.
But he has had a dig, and that's his own language. He said previously when he talked about the UK...
No, you called it a dig.
Well,
He made a statement. He made a statement. He made an observation.
His language previously, I need to beat up on the UK. So don't try and tell me that he's not having a dig when he himself has admitted that he, as he put it, needs to beat up on the UK.